1985. A California-born driver with a reputation for raw speed arrived at the 69th Indianapolis 500 in a British-built racing car that many traditionalists still viewed with suspicion. The March 85C had been designed in England, far from the brick walls of Indianapolis, and it represented everything the old guard believed did not belong at America's greatest race. The men who ruled the Brickyard looked at these lightweight European-style machines and dismissed them as outsiders. To many, they were clever but fragile. They believed American oval racing still belonged to proven combinations, experienced veterans, and tradition that stretched back generations. That same afternoon, after one of the most famous moments ever witnessed at Indianapolis, that British car recovered from what should have been certain defeat, charged back through the field, and captured one of the greatest victories in the history of the Indianapolis 500. This is the story of the March 85C. The story did not begin in Indianapolis. It began thousands of miles away in Bicester, Oxfordshire, where March Engineering had built a reputation for doing more with less. Founded in 1969 by Max Mosley, Robin Hurd, Alan Rees, and Graham Coker, the company never possessed the financial strength of the biggest manufacturers. Instead, it survived by designing competitive racing cars and selling them to teams across multiple championships. That business model made March different. While major manufacturers built cars exclusively for their own factory teams, March produced customer chassis that could be purchased by independent organizations. A successful design could appear on grids all over the world, driven by completely different teams. It was not just clever engineering, it was survival. By the early 1980s, March had become one of the dominant names in American open-wheel racing. The March 85C, introduced for the 1985 kart season, represented another step forward. Its structure centered around an aluminium honeycomb monocoque, a lightweight safety cell that was both rigid and remarkably strong for its era. Suspension components were carefully packaged to maximize tire contact on rough oval surfaces, while remaining adaptable enough for road courses. Under the sleek bodywork sat a turbocharged 2.65-liter Cosworth DFX V8, an engine that had become the benchmark of American IndyCar racing. Producing well over 700 horsepower in race trim and significantly more during qualifying, the DFX had earned an almost mythical reputation for durability. The difference was simple. March supplied the chassis, Cosworth supplied the power. Together, they formed one of the strongest combinations on the grid. A fast chassis alone would never conquer Indianapolis. If March built the weapon, Roger Penske intended to use it better than anyone else. Penske had grown from a successful racing driver into one of America's most respected team owners. Calm, disciplined, and relentlessly organized, he demanded perfection from every person working inside his operation. His workshop looked less like a traditional race garage and more like a precision engineering laboratory. Everything had a place, everything was measured, everything was documented. That culture became one of Penske's greatest advantages. While many teams relied on brilliant improvisation, Penske preferred preparation. Nothing happened by accident. The March 85C, arriving at Team Penske, was therefore never going to remain a standard customer car. Every component was inspected. Every suspension setting was evaluated. Every aerodynamic adjustment was recorded. Tiny improvements accumulated into meaningful gains. That discipline attracted exceptional people. Among them was Danny Sullivan, a charismatic Californian whose path to Indianapolis had been anything but ordinary. Unlike many American racers who learned on dirt ovals, Sullivan had traveled to Europe, competing in Formula Ford, Formula 3, and Formula 2 before returning home. That international experience shaped his driving style. He was smooth, patient, comfortable with cars that moved underneath him. Some observers admired that approach. Others doubted it would ever make him an Indianapolis 500 winner. The establishment believed raw aggression won on ovals. What they did not see was that Sullivan possessed extraordinary car control, something that would soon become priceless. He could save a car after mistakes that ended other drivers' races. Nobody could have known how important that ability would become. Preparing an Indianapolis car involved solving a problem unlike almost any other form of motorsport. The car would spend nearly 500 miles turning left at extraordinary speed, with the throttle open for astonishing lengths of time. That placed enormous stress on every component. Finding speed was only half the challenge. Keeping that speed for 200 laps was far more difficult. The March 85C addressed this with remarkably clean aerodynamic design. Air flowing over the nose and side pods produced downforce that pushed the car into the racing surface without creating unnecessary drag. More downforce helped the tires grip the asphalt through the corners. Too much downforce slowed the car on long straights. Engineers spent countless hours balancing those competing demands. Even slight changes in ride height could alter how efficiently air flowed underneath the chassis. A few millimeters could make the difference between stability and nervous handling at over 220 miles per hour. Meanwhile, the turbocharged Cosworth DFX demanded careful management. Turbochargers forced additional air into the engine, allowing more fuel to burn and dramatically increasing power. The reward was breathtaking acceleration. The penalty was heat, huge amounts of it. Cooling systems worked relentlessly throughout the race, and drivers constantly monitored gauges that could warn of trouble before smoke ever appeared. Every lap represented a balance between outright speed and mechanical sympathy. What rival teams did not know was how comfortable Sullivan had become with this balance during testing. Rather than chasing spectacular qualifying headlines, Penske focused on creating a car that remained predictable deep into long runs. That confidence was about to become the most expensive mistake for everyone expecting Team Penske to fade over 500 miles. By May 1985, Indianapolis had become the center of the racing world once again. More than 300,000 spectators would eventually pack the famous speedway for race day, while teams from across North America fought through weeks of practice, qualifying, and constant adjustment. Every morning began with new ideas. Every evening ended with mechanics still working. Cars returned to the garage carrying fresh data, worn tires, and lists of tiny problems that demanded immediate solutions. A vibration here, a temperature increase there. Nothing was ignored. Danny Sullivan gradually built confidence with every session. The March responded consistently. The Cosworth engine delivered dependable power. The Penske crew refined the setup one adjustment at a time. While some competitors searched desperately for dramatic breakthroughs, Penske searched for perfection in small details. Because another Team Penske driver, Rick Mears, remained one of the favorites, much of the attention centered elsewhere. Danny Sullivan entered race week respected, but not universally viewed as the man most likely to write history. Less attention meant fewer distractions, less pressure, more focus. Nobody inside the garage could have known that only days later, the March 85C would perform a maneuver so extraordinary that it would receive its own name, become part of Indianapolis folklore, and transform Danny Sullivan from a fast driver into one of the most recognizable winners the Indianapolis 500 has ever produced. But Indianapolis in 1985, horsepower alone did not win races. Keeping that horsepower alive for 500 miles did. The Cosworth DFX produced enormous power, but turbochargers created equally dramatic problems. Internal temperatures climbed rapidly, oil worked harder than ever, and every moving part lived under tremendous stress. Finding speed was easy compared with keeping everything together. Penske's solution was not glamorous, it was disciplined. Every cooling duct, every fuel calculation, and every engine setting was chosen with the entire distance in mind. While some competitors chased spectacular lap times early in long practice runs, Penske concentrated on consistency, lap after lap, fuel load after fuel load. That philosophy suited Danny Sullivan perfectly. His driving style was remarkably smooth. He avoided unnecessary steering corrections, managed the throttle carefully, and rarely asked more from the car than it could comfortably provide. Some drivers attacked the car. Sullivan worked with it. That difference would soon save his afternoon. The March 85C was constantly changing throughout the month of May. Ride height, spring rates, wing angles, tire pressures. Each adjustment sounded insignificant on paper, yet together they transformed how the car behaved through Indianapolis's 4 sweeping corners. Too much downforce made the car wonderfully stable, but slower on the long straights. Too little downforce increased top speed, yet made the car nervous at over 220 miles per hour. Finding the perfect compromise required endless testing. It was not just mathematics, it was trust. While rival teams searched for dramatic breakthroughs, Penske quietly eliminated weaknesses one after another. The March 85C was becoming easier to drive over long distances, and that mattered far more than producing one spectacular qualifying lap. Danny Sullivan could now place the car exactly where he wanted, lap after lap, while preserving both the tires and the machinery beneath him. Nobody outside the garage fully appreciated what had been created. In reality, Penske had built a race car designed not merely to survive Indianapolis, but to control it when the pressure became unbearable. Sunday, May 26, 1985. More than 300,000 spectators surrounded the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. The familiar traditions unfolded once again. Drivers climbed aboard, engines fired, the field rolled away. For the opening laps, the established contenders occupied the front. Indianapolis rewarded experience, and several former winners immediately settled into a relentless pace. Danny Sullivan remained patient. There was no panic, no desperate lunges, only discipline. While others concentrated on leading every possible lap, Sullivan concentrated on protecting the car beneath him. Fuel strategy remained critical. Tire wear remained critical. Traffic management remained critical. Roger Penske watched calmly from the pit lane. Crew members monitored fuel consumption, tire condition, lap times, and engine temperatures with remarkable precision. The race gradually settled into a rhythm. Cars began dropping out with mechanical failures. Others lost time in the pits. Exactly as Penske had expected, Indianapolis started eliminating mistakes. The March 85C simply kept circulating, steady, reliable, fast enough to remain among the leaders without abusing its equipment. That confidence was about to become the most expensive mistake anyone made that afternoon, because one rival still stood directly between Danny Sullivan and victory. His name was Mario Andretti. Few drivers in the history of motorsport possessed Andretti's reputation. World champion, Indianapolis winner, and one of America's greatest racers, he understood exactly how to control the biggest events. As the laps counted down, the battle everyone had anticipated finally arrived. One experienced champion, one determined challenger. Everything that followed would become part of racing history. With fewer than 30 laps remaining, Danny Sullivan closed rapidly on race leader Mario Andretti. The gap disappeared. The crowd sensed what was coming. Sullivan pulled alongside, entering turn 1, attempting one of the boldest overtaking moves seen all afternoon. For a split second, it appeared perfectly timed. Then, everything changed. The March suddenly lost grip. Its rear tires stepped sideways. The car rotated violently. Smoke poured from the tires as it spun completely around at racing speed. At more than 200 miles per hour, a full spin at Indianapolis almost always ended in disaster. Usually the outside wall waited only fractions of a second away. Usually suspension broke. Usually races ended. Instead, something extraordinary happened. Danny Sullivan caught the slide. The car completed a full 360-degree spin, somehow missing both the wall and Mario Andretti's machine by inches. Thousands of spectators stood frozen. Mechanics stopped working. Commentators struggled to describe what they had just witnessed. Andretti later admitted he expected Sullivan to crash. Almost everyone did. What Mario Andretti could not have known was how much Sullivan's years racing in Europe had sharpened his instinctive car control. The march straightened, Sullivan selected the correct gear, applied the throttle, and continued. Mission accomplished? Not even close. The race had only become more dramatic, because despite surviving what should have been certain retirement, Danny Sullivan refused to surrender the fight. The famous spin and win had only just begun. Most drivers would have accepted second place. Danny Sullivan did not. The miraculous spin had cost him momentum, but it had not damaged the March 85C. The suspension remained intact, the steering still felt true. Most importantly, the Cosworth DFX V8 continued to deliver full power. That alone was remarkable. Roger Penske immediately understood what that meant. The race was still alive. While much of the grandstand was still trying to process what they had witnessed, Sullivan gathered himself and returned to full pace. There was no visible panic over the radio, no emotional outburst, just another series of qualifying speed laps. That calm reflected the culture Penske had spent years building. Preparation first, emotion later. Meanwhile, Mario Andretti believed the biggest threat had finally disappeared. What Mario Andretti did not know was that Sullivan's tires had recovered quickly, and the Penske crew had spent the entire month producing a car that remained predictable even after being pushed to its limit. Lap after lap, Sullivan began closing once again. The gap shrank. The march looked planted through the corners. Spectators sensed history approaching. Mechanics leaned over the pit wall. Television cameras refused to look anywhere else. The Indianapolis 500 had become a duel between two of the finest drivers in the field. One represented established greatness. The other represented the challenger, refusing to disappear. When Sullivan finally drew alongside again, he completed the pass cleanly. This time, there would be no spin, no hesitation, only commitment. Once in front, Sullivan immediately increased the pace. The March 85C had spent the afternoon preserving itself, while others slowly consumed their machinery. Now it possessed exactly what Penske had planned for all month: speed when it mattered most. Mario Andretti chased with everything he had. The gap remained. The closing laps of the 69th Indianapolis 500 unfolded with almost unbearable tension. Danny Sullivan now led America's greatest race, yet nobody inside Team Penske could relax. Indianapolis had destroyed too many victories over the years. Engines failed, gearboxes broke, fuel calculations went wrong. Every lap completed was one lap closer to history, but also one lap closer to disaster. Roger Penske remained remarkably composed on the pit stand. The March 85C continued circulating with astonishing consistency. Behind Sullivan, Mario Andretti searched for one final opportunity, but the gap refused to disappear. The Penske crew had built exactly the kind of machine Indianapolis demanded: fast, reliable, predictable. A car that had completed a full-speed 360-degree spin earlier in the afternoon was now pulling away from one of the greatest drivers in motorsport history. Nobody could have known that one mistake would become the defining image of the race instead of its ending. When the checkered flag finally waved after 200 laps and 500 miles, Danny Sullivan crossed the finish line as the winner of the 1985 Indianapolis 500. Mission accomplished. The grandstand erupted. Crew members climbed the pit wall in celebration. Roger Penske had another Indianapolis victory. Danny Sullivan had earned the greatest triumph of his career. and the March 85C had secured its place in motorsport history. Yet what people remembered most was not the final margin, it was the spin. Within hours, newspapers around the world were calling it spin and win. The phrase became inseparable from Danny Sullivan's name and remains one of the most recognizable moments ever produced at Indianapolis. Even veteran competitors struggled to believe a driver could rotate a car completely at racing speed, avoid both the wall and another competitor, regain control, and still win the race. That sequence became part of Indianapolis folklore. The victory also reinforced Roger Penske's growing reputation as the master of preparation. His teams would continue building one of the greatest records in Indianapolis history, eventually collecting dozens of Indianapolis 500 victories. For March Engineering, the triumph represented another chapter in an extraordinary American success story. A relatively small British constructor had demonstrated that intelligent engineering could conquer the biggest stage in American open-wheel racing. The cost of victory was not measured in damaged equipment or shattered dreams. It was measured in relentless preparation, weeks of testing, thousands of workshop hours, hundreds of tiny engineering decisions that spectators never noticed. That was the real reason the March survived when everything seemed lost. The 1985 race became one of the defining moments in Indianapolis history and remains a reference point whenever drivers attempt spectacular recoveries. The lesson never changed. Stay calm, protect the car, wait for the moment that matters. The phrase spin and win entered racing vocabulary because of Danny Sullivan and the March 85C. No highlight reel of the Indianapolis 500 feels complete without it, and decades later, it remains one of the first moments shown whenever the history of the Brickyard is celebrated. The men who believed British-built chassis were outsiders laughed right up until the moment one of them produced one of the greatest victories Indianapolis had ever witnessed. They expected the March to become another forgotten visitor. Instead, it became immortal. If you enjoyed this story, there are plenty more like it on the channel. Hit subscribe and I will make it worth your time.